So there's a minor, I say minor, observation that has come up in the last 2 or 3 coaching sessions that I've had with various people, some in churches, some in other businesses. And I think it's, I don't want to call it a skill set, but I think it's an awareness tool that leaders should employ if they really want to be able to move forward, especially in hiring, training, placing people, and creating the next level of opportunity. So we've heard people say, like Mark Batterson says, you know, I didn't have a drummer. We wanted a drummer. We prayed for a drummer. We looked for a drummer. We recruited for a drummer. We scouted for a drummer, and we had no drummer. And he said, one day I was praying, and I felt like God said, buy a drum set. And he's like, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would I buy a drum set when I don't have a drummer? But he bought the drum set, he put it on the platform, and within days, a drummer showed up. Now, some might say, well, yeah, that's just like the law of attraction. You think about it, you think about it, you think about it, and then suddenly it happens. And there's some metaphysical realities there, but there's also this planning and preparation aspect. So here's what I see with a lot of organizations, and of course, as with everything, I'm challenged with in my own life. I have to put it into play as well. When you're setting up, whether we're talking about hiring a new person or training a volunteer or moving someone from where they're at one level, one area that they serve or one project that they've been tasked with to the next one, what happens many times is we kind of find the person, we find the candidate via resume or relationship or whatever, and we just kind of shove them in that hole, and then we trim off the edges of the person or the personality until they fit what we needed done. And it's kind of like shoving a marshmallow in a piggy bank. And what we don't do is define the parameters up front. See, it's so much easier to find what you're looking for when you have an idea what you're looking for. So I sat with a client for a couple of hours, I think it's been 2.5 weeks ago, and we sat and we chatted over pancakes and breakfast, and at one point he said, you know, there are a couple of strategic objectives that I need to accomplish, and one of those is hiring this person to do these tasks, and another is, going out and finding more business like this. And so as we discussed those things back and forth, I asked him, what does the actual job description look like for this person you're going to hire? And he just kind of looked at me for a minute. I said, well, how about the people that person's going to be recruiting? And he's like, no, I really don't have that either. I mean, I know what it is they need to do. And I said, well, I understand that you know what their tasks assignments are. I get that. But what about the next level of that? What is the ideal candidate for that position? Forget about anybody that you've seen before. Forget about even their resumes or a specific educational background. Let's talk about the qualities, the nature, the behavioral patterns, the psychological processes of the ideal candidate who would be able to do the job that you want to get done. Are they someone who's really quick on their feet? They're great with business. They can manage spreadsheets. And as we went on, what we realized, just in this little discussion, and we weren't writing anything down, we were still sitting over our pancakes, but in this little discussion, what we realized was in the past for this position, they've looked for someone with a very specific background, someone who's educated in a specific field. And the more we talked about it, the more I realized, while that may be beneficial, it really only represents about 30% of the actual job. 70% of the job has to do with leading people who, by their nature and education, are very hard to lead. Physicians. And so the average Joe who doesn't know anything about medicine or anything about a medical practice is going to have a hard time leading them. But even the person who has a great background in medical practice or a great background in nursing or even hospital administration is going to have a hard time leading doctors who are independent, meaning they don't work within a particular hospital system. They're on call or they're private practice on their own or anything of that nature. And so the challenge is, well, you're not looking to hire for that role as a nurse. because a nurse is going to have a different kind of demeanor, a different way of practicing than someone who's going to be able to lead, to monitor, to manage, to control physicians. And so just simply talking through what the daily activities look like, what is the best person for this job? What kind of personality do they need? Yes, the education is important. The skill set is more important than what they've been trained by someone else to do. And what I mean by that is what they're naturally capable of may be different than what they went to school for. See, I'm one of those weirdos that, number one, I only put about 40% of what I actually do on any resume. And if you go look at my resume right now, you're going to see a background in sales and marketing. And, you know, I've listed the last couple of years with the television network and things of that nature, but they're tasks, they're projects that I've completed. But the things that I do on a daily basis, the conversations that I have, the books that I've written, the speeches that I've delivered, the coaching that I've done, none of that stuff is outlined in my resume. It's not even there. It says that I am a leadership coach, but the depth of what I do is not even really outlined. So I tell people, and I have since I was in my early 20s, don't trust what's already been written on paper about me, by me, or anybody else. I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm just saying it's not the complete picture. If you want to know me, interview me. Ask me the questions, the toughest questions you can come up with that surround the position that you want to fill. And if I can't answer them, don't hire me for the job. Or if I answer them inaccurately or in a way that doesn't satisfy your need, then don't hire me for the job. But please don't make that decision based on a resume and an educational history, because that's not a fair assessment, at least not in my case. And I honestly believe that when you've set the parameters for the person that you want to hire, when you set the parameters for the project that you want to do, setting those parameters first is most important. Now, here's how that really plays out in leadership. Today, I have a meeting at 2 o'clock with a young man who has done a great deal of video editing for me in the past. Yesterday, as we talked on the phone, I said, this is how I think I want to do this project. I've got a limited budget. I've got a limited amount of time. Here's what the assets look like. Here's what the tools and the toys look like. So let's kind of do it this way. And he said, well, I disagree. I think we should do it like this and this. Now, trust me, I wouldn't be hiring him as a video editor if I didn't trust his common sense, his editorial sense, and his understanding of video and production. I know what his training is. I know where he's worked. But I've worked with him, alongside him. I've been in classes with him. I've hired him for different projects from different positions before. I know that he's good at what he does. But I also know that, like any other good salesman, he has a strategy that helps him guarantee future income. And I'm totally okay with that. But I need to be extremely tactical on what I'm going to do. So after we discussed it for 15 or 20 minutes on the phone, I said, you know what, let me buy you a cup of coffee. Let's sit down and draw out a storyboard, a storyline, and let's look at the short-term and long-term results of your plan and the short-term and long-term results of my plan, and let's see which one gets us where we're going faster. So we plan to define the parameters. What is step 1? What is step 2? What is step 3? Is this sounding familiar? See, a lot of people apply this to their goals in life, to their vision for life. But do you do that when you're starting a new project? Do you outline what that plan is going to look like? Do you begin with the end in mind? Do you do that when you're hiring someone? And again, this could be for a volunteer role. This could be for a paid position. This could be for a leader or director's position. It could be for an outside contractor. I spent a couple of hours yesterday with an educational person from a church. We were talking about me coming on board as a leadership consultant and working with both their volunteer leadership training team and their staff. And they've already got a leadership college, is what they call it within their organization, and they really want to grow that to the next level. But when I ask, who is it that you're training to teach this class in the next evolution? She said, well, we've already got the people that teach it. And I said, right, but who teaches it next? Are they being groomed to understand what the nuances of this program are? Do they understand where the people go when they leave this program? They go to this area of ministry or this area of service or this task or this volunteer role. Have you already groomed the people in this leadership role to be able to prepare them for those places? Or is everyone leaving the leadership college and going to these ministries, and so you got nobody left to teach it? What if one of those people retires, gets a better offer, moves on to another job, just decides they're done, gets hit by a bus, whatever? You come in next Monday and you got no leadership teachers. Who have you groomed for that space next? And what expectations do you have for them? Because here's what I know for a fact. If someone is inclined already to further their education, to further their experience, to further their opportunity, to improve their skill sets, they're the kind of person who's going to show up in this leadership class to begin with. Now, they may already have a goal in mind of serving on the worship team or serving in this other capacity. You have them in your regular secular workplace as well. They're willing to take the job as the hostess in the restaurant because eventually they want to be a restaurant general manager. That's probably not the best path if your dream job is to be the master chef. Starting off as the hostess will help you understand the business, but being in the kitchen is probably a better place to start if that's the side you want to be on, not on the admin side. The same thing goes true if you want to run small businesses. Yes, you could start out changing tires and changing oil, but if mechanic isn't really the path that you want to be in the small business owners category, unless that's the kind of business, all the nitty-gritty of the operation of that business is not as necessary as the understanding of business in general. You follow me so far? So whether we're talking about the leadership capacity, or we're talking about the role of a volunteer, or we're talking about the career path of a 20-something who's looking at life going, whether it's trade school or it's college or it's jump into the workforce right now or go off to the military, if I don't know where I'm going 3 to 5 years from now, I can't make a plan for today. Those obviously are really important steps. And there are a lot of people who get really busy about what's going on today, and they don't bother to plan for 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now. That's a real challenge. But that challenge just doesn't happen to the individual who's living the workaday life and not planning for their career, not planning for their next level of education, not planning for what's next in their life or for their retirement. It happens to organizations who presume that everybody who's on board now will always be on board, that every skill set, every talent, everything you've groomed and trained into them will always be in play on your behalf. And that's simply not the case. But it's really hard to fill a role, whether we're talking about a leadership training person, we're talking about a pastor or a school teacher or a firefighter. If you don't know what the ideal person looks like, not just the job description, not just the resume, the ideal person, what kind of character do they have? What kind of personality do they have? And one of the things that I love about Mick Moffitt's Fire Training Academy, and forgive me for not remembering the name of it, but the Fire Training Academy that they have out in Burleson, they focus on 5 foundational characteristics of character. And those foundational characteristics are taught from day one. It's not just about fire science. It's not just about how to rescue someone from a burning building, how to put out a different kind of fire, or when to attack versus when not to attack a fire. Yes, they learn all that stuff too, but they learn to be men and women of integrity in the fire service. So whether it's wildland firefighting, or it's working in the shipyards, or working from the helicopter, or working on the ground in search and rescue, in disasters, or just fighting a house fire or a jet fire. Yes, all of that training is available, but the wrong kind of person trying to do that job may have the skill sets, but not the personality or the character for it. So from day one, that training academy starts with, let's help you to become the kind of person who's responsible for other people's lives. It's not just skills training, it's personality and character training. Well, that also means that early on, you may wash out for character, not for skill. John Maxwell says it this way. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And it's so true because it happens at almost every level in every organization. We hire people for what they know, the resume, the job history, the educational history. We fire them for who they are, their character, their behavior, their tenacity, their stick-to-itiveness, their integrity. It's great to know that they know all these things, But if the character doesn't live up to it, if the type of person doesn't meld with your team, if the type of person can't do the job because there are nuances to the job that are really hard to put in a job description and almost impossible to find in a resume. If those things are not identified before you interview the person, chances are you won't find the person. Why? Because it's an ambiguous target. The last couple of weeks in the high school mentoring that I do, we started with no target on the board and just gave them a paper wad and said, hit the target. Well, what's the target? Well, it's up there. And they threw all over the wall. And then I drew a big giant circle and I said, hit the target. And almost everyone was able to hit the target. And then I drew smaller and smaller and smaller circles until it got down to a dot. And you know what's funny? The majority of the kids could still hit the dot. Did it become more complicated with the dot? No, it became more precise. The expectations went up, but because they knew what those expectations were, they were able to live up to them. So whether you call it the law of attraction or the just understanding the true nature of the reticular activating system in the brain, if you have an executive search team and they're looking to hire an employee or to train a volunteer or to place someone in their next level opportunity, if you can get a picture, not of the face of that person, because that'd be a little creepy, but if you can get a picture in your mind of the type of personality, yes, skill sets are important, but the type of personality, you know, they have this kind of attitude, and these are the things that are important to them, and these are the priorities in their life. You know, when I teach the attitude hack, one of the key elements of attitude hack is understanding that people express their attitude, their deep, heartfelt convictions, through the words that come out of their mouth. Whatever they're thinking deep in their heart, that's what's going to come out of their mouth. And so the phrases that they use on a regular basis, if you understand what those are and how they work, you can begin to kind of put those together, like an attitude of complacency. That attitude of complacency, there are 4 or 5 key phrases that if you start to hear those 4 or 5 key phrases from that individual together, don't bother hiring them. They've already dismissed life. There are 4 or 5 key phrases that when you hear those in combination with each other, they have an attitude of entitlement and there will be no satisfying them. No pay raises, no amount of vacation time, no amount of sick days off. Nothing that you do will make them happy in their job. You can't bring them to a level of contentment because they're entitled, they demand everything. That becomes a real challenge in the workplace, especially if you also have people who are of an older generation and their expectations are a little different in life. So understanding how those attitudes play and understanding what the parameters of the job are will allow you, this is no exaggeration, you may be standing at the line at the grocery store and you hear someone say, wow, I think I could have done that better. Can I try that again? And you go, wow, I've heard that phrase before. That's an attitude of excellence. That's the kind of people I want working for me. That's the kind of guy that demands diligence. He demands excellence. He demands determination. He demands that he give dignity of way to other people. He honors other. That's the kind of person I want on my team. She's going to be a great asset because no matter what her natural skills are, no matter what she's even been trained to do, she's got the attitude that's going to allow us to succeed. And that's a big deal. See, developing that expectation up front, knowing what the ideal candidate looks like, volunteer or paid, will make it a whole lot easier to spot them when they come along. And you may spot them at Starbucks. You may spot them in line at Walmart. You may spot them at church. Because you hear those phrases and you go, that's the attitude I'm looking for. That's the kind of background that I need. Hey, let's have a cup of coffee and talk. Or maybe they're not even looking. But man, you're getting closer. You have an opportunity now to identify what that person might look, think, talk, act like. That's powerful stuff. So let me challenge you. Set the parameters of the person that you're trying to hire, the project that you want to complete. Not just what are the steps that I have to do to get there, but set the long-range ideal. Understanding this is ideal and we're probably not going to match 100%. But if I don't know what the ideal is, I won't know good when I see it. I won't recognize near perfection when I hear it. So that's my challenge to you over the next week for those projects and people that you're looking to put in place. As Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, but set the ideal as the framework and then fill in the blanks around it. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.